I welcome all of you to the 7th Think Tank at Amity Online, and we're going to be, discussing a very interesting topic today on retail, which is retail now in new business shape. And my name is Deepak Chakravarti, and I take care of visual merchandising and retail marketing at Bata India Limited. And I'm very happy to be joined by, esteemed panelists today with me. So on my extreme right-hand side, I have Deepak Chabbra, who is the CEO and MD for Crocs India. So Deepak, would you like to introduce yourself to the panelists and the audience?
Thank you, Deepak, and good morning all. I'm Deepak. I represent Crocs in India. Crocs is a US-based billion-dollar footwear brand. We make pretty fancy footwear. As I was telling Deepak this morning, yesterday I was in Mumbai, and somebody told me that once you go to your store, it looks like a candy store. It's so colorful. So I need not give much more introduction about Crocs, but about the journey of Crocs in India. We are here for about 10 years. We function through all channels of distribution, which includes traditional geographical distribution, as well as online, e-commerce, web stores, large format stores, and we have our own exclusive outlets.
Thank you, Deepak. And I'm very happy to welcome Mr. Mayank Arora. He is the Vice President HR for Mrs. Bector Foods. And Mayank, would you like to
Thank you,
say
Deepak. My name is Mayank. I represent the organization called Mrs. Bector Foods, popularly recognized by the name Cremica and English Oven in Delhi NCR majorly. We are into manufacturing of premium cookies and breads, and we are also one of the largest suppliers of buns in the country. Thank you, Deepak. Thank you for having me over here.
Great, and that really certainly makes us feel hungry.
Yes.
And towards my left-hand side, I have Prashant Dayal, who is the business head for franchisee operations PepsiCo. So Prashant, would you like to say something?
Morning, everybody. My name is Prashant, and I work with PepsiCo. I've been with them for the last 7 years. PepsiCo is a house of brands. It has almost $22 billion brands in its portfolio.
Okay.
In India, we've been here for the last 27 odd years, and we have a gamut of products ranging from Fun for You, which is all your Pepsi, your 7-Up, Mirinda, all these products. Then you have a Better For You range, which is your Tropicana juices. And then we have the Good For You range, which is Quaker, as well as all our nutrition brands. PepsiCo has been available across channels, right? Start from mom and pop stores to the e-commerce, which is the newest big daddy in town. And it'll be great to have this discussion on the changing retail formats in the country.
Great. I think it's a great mix of footwear to food to like beverages. Yeah. So this is the exciting time for Indian retail. I would say the World Bank has said that India is going to be the fastest growing economy in 2018, which is growing at 7.3%. And the organized retail has seen an unprecedented growth from a 9% in 2016 to an estimated 15% in 2025. So this is the great time. This is the great time for retail. And the retail industry has definitely gone through tectonic changes over the past 2 decades, with the slow transition from the unorganized sector to the organized one. The story of retail in India during the last decade has been, nothing less than a revolution, shaped by world-class designs, quality investments, and also engaging stakeholders. The remarkable growth in the Indian economy over the last few years is, considerably, driven by the Indian retail industry. So I'm going to be, opening the discussion with Deepak. I'm going to be asking him, like, Deepak, if you could just let us know that how has this journey been, from the initial days of retail in the 90s to this super fast-paced, kind of, situation now. So if you can just take us through that.
Sure. Incidentally, my professional career also spans for about 2 decades, and that is where majority of movement in retail has happened. 96, 97 when I started, the only channel of distribution used to be those mom and pop stores, which used to be serviced largely through regional distributors. Every state used to have a distributor. He used to service small size mom and pop stores. And then within 2.5 years, a lot of international brands moved in with exclusive brand format, which gave retail the next step which was required. Thanks to the liberalization process during that time, FDIs were allowed for single brands. And when these brands moved in, they brought a lot of innovation, a lot of world-class services, and an environment where you can have a single brand serviced in, it's largely serving all 5 senses of the consumer. So you have visual displays which were world-class, you had training which went into employees, front-end employees, which was not available at that point of time in India, and the widest assortments. It was followed by large format stores. Shopper Stop opened during the same time. That was the first one mover in departmental stores. Future Group moved in with Big Bazaar format again during the same time. So those small grocery stores or small multi-branded fashion, footwear, apparel stores gave way to large format departmental stores and hyper stores. And that journey continued, it kept on building on till about 2010. That is when the major shift in distribution or retail happened with the advent of online. India being such a large country wherein about 1,600 towns and cities have the capability or the consumers who can invest in premium fashion products, servicing such a wide geography is not easy at all. When you are opening stores, whether it is through your exclusive stores or through your partners who have multi-brand outlets or the large format stores, still there's a limitation. Most of them are, as we call, energy cities. There are about 5 cities in India, which 4 metros plus Bangalore, which still contributes to 50% of the business.
Absolutely.
So the reach still was not there.
Yeah.
So online actually bridged that gap. So online brought about 3-4 things which were challenging at that point of time for the retail in India. One was the reach. So online doesn't have boundaries. People can order from anywhere else, can get delivered in 24 hours now. It doesn't have a physical limitation of space. You can have the widest assortment possible. But the biggest thing which I feel, these two are very obvious benefits of online or e-commerce as we fondly call. But the biggest thing is the visibility of availability. You go to a store, you like a pair of shoe and you don't find your size.
Yes.
This happens all the time.
Yeah.
You go to an apparel store, you like a shirt, you don't have medium. And I can't fit into small. So that problem also got resolved. So you knew exactly what is available. And if it's not available, there's a way out to get it. So the online is a major disruptor, or rather, probably I've used the wrong word, disruptor. It's an enabler, I would say. This completes the distribution network and the retail portion. But unfortunately, today, most of the questions are around whether offline, whether online, whether stores will be dead. I think they don't exist. These questions are baseless. Both of them are important. It's a seamless integration between these channels, which we fondly call omni-channel, which is the way forward. I do listen to a lot of people saying stores are going to be dead. No, stores are not going to be dead. Stores need a reboot. They have to keep pace with the elevated expectation of the consumer, which they have got used to by higher service levels of our online partners. So I feel the next move should be a seamless integration between online, offline, and I won't restrict to e-commerce per se, because e-commerce doesn't mean only those marketplaces or inventory-led e-commerce. It also means social media. The millennial, they are shopping from FaceTime, they're shopping from
Absolutely.
Insta, they're shopping
Yes.
from Twitter. So they have got the buy now buttons. So that the whole channels, whether it is social media, whether it is marketplaces, whether it is offline, they all have to be integrated seamlessly. And that is where the tech comes, that is where the digital piece comes, and that is how we talk about store of the future.
Wonderful. I think the major takeaway is seamless integration. I think which is going to be the way forward. Yeah.
Sure.
So thank you so much, Deepak, for these insights.
Deepak, I think I'd
And,
like just to add that
sure.
what you mentioned, the stores have to reboot the mom and pop stores. I think that's something which is pretty important, and that's something which is happening. So already you have instances where the mom and pop stores, which were standalone stores, you just couldn't see anything happening there behind. You just ask for one product. So let's say you were to go and ask for a chocolate, and suddenly he says that no, I don't have a Cat Dairy Milk. I just have a Kit Kat. Take that. Suddenly, that guy has the whole consumer experience is being elevated because that retailer understands the fact that it is not possible for that consumer to not to service that consumer. So what he'll say is, this time around, please take this. Next time, I'll ensure that I get that. And that's exactly what's happening. So I belong to Jaipur, slightly smaller city than Delhi is, still a reasonably large town. When I was growing up, the store next, we used to go to a store for apparel, and when we used to go there, exactly the problem that he mentioned, that either one brand wasn't available or the size wasn't available. This time around, same store, 20 years later, when I go there, I realize that the guy says that I still keep a very little, small product range, but you let me know and I'll get it to you tomorrow. How? He has this app through which he orders online, gets a product, and services and delivers it at home. So he gets it, he gets this markup, and still delivers. So that's the kind of consumer service and experience that the mom and pop stores are building on by adding and bridging that gap between offline, online availability, range, and the whole merchandising concept. So it's going visual, but it's also becoming a lot more real now.
Wonderful. So I think it's going to be a win-win situation for the customers. I think that is where we, like, every brand is kind of trying to woo them, and give them that wow experience. Great. Thanks, Prashant. So we need scalability. So we need franchisees. So franchisees, franchising as a business model has been known in India for decades. And there has been a clear growth, which is anticipated from a 30 to 40%, per year, which has been witnessed in the last 4 to 5 years. So how do you see franchisee business, evolving in the future, and what impact do you think it will play in the retail scenario for India?
Deepak, franchising, as you rightly said, has been there. I would like to say, as long as retail's been there, franchising has been there. Franchising essentially is allowing somebody else to sell your brand, your product, or represent you in a certain market where you yourself are not present or present in a limited manner. So franchising and the industry that I belong to, the beverage industry, lends itself to franchising in a very big way. Both PepsiCo and our biggest competitor, which is Coca-Cola, have been a franchise-forward category for the longest time. So what does franchising do for the brand? It gives you instant scale.
Right.
So say a brand, take the example of Hilton. So it's essentially a brand, a hotel name, hotel brand, which doesn't actually have any physical assets.
Yeah.
They franchise their brand name, and the scale that they get in India, as soon as you land up, you suddenly have 50 hotels which are existing under small different brand names. You get them under the Hilton brand name because you give them sudden respect, and you give them access, and suddenly the consumers, the hotel chains can price up because they are associated with the brand. That's kind of instant scale that one gets. Again, for the brand, it's an asset-light model. You don't really need to invest. Imagine setting up 50 hotels or setting up 40 plants for beverage production. And then on the flip side, imagine you have a building which is already existing. You have 40 plants which are being produced and invested by the bottler, and you have sudden scale. You have access to, let's say, 20 states all of a sudden, which are your priority states when you were not even existent a day before. So, and that without any heavy capex investments in capital expenditure. So suddenly you have scale at a very asset-light model. The other thing, what does a brand owner or a brand do? It basically builds the brand. It strategizes to ensure how can I take it wider, take it broader, and go deeper with the consumer, engage more. And I would like to engage, how do I develop the category to have more access to a wider portion of people? That's what I want to do as a brand manager or a brand owner. And that's what I can focus on, because the distribution part, which is scale but is very, it's very localized, can actually be outsourced to somebody who can do it better than me. The other thing that I can do is I have lesser risk. I have low capital expenditure. If something was to happen, I can pack my bags and go. So which is not what most brands would want to do, but then at the end of things, not always, everything doesn't work out like the way you'd want to. Therefore, you have that option. and you can do with a lot fewer people doing a lot more revenue generation. What does it do for the franchisee? So the person who's buying the franchise, it gives you sudden access to a brand which is established, either global or Indian. It gives you scale, and it gives you a lot of visibility for those people, for those other brands who would want scale and who would want an entity which already is dealing with a lot of respectable brands. So it actually is a win-win. Therefore, in the last few years, you realize that a lot of brands which are coming in India are coming in with the franchise forward. McDonald's in India is largely franchise. KFC, Pizza Hut, you look at Subway, a lot of franchise forward. So these are all food brands. You look at Hilton, as I told you. Again, Hyatt is doing that. A lot. Radisson's been doing it. So a lot of across channels, the petroleum industry has been doing it for years, where a petrol bunk owner is actually a franchisor on behalf of the brand. Therefore, and because of these advantages and the growing consumer base, franchising as a concept, as an industry, will carry on building. In fact, the shoe care industry is one, shoe industry is, apparel industry is another one, where you have a lot of brands coming through in the franchise model. Deepak, both of you actually have a franchise system in place as well.
Yes.
So you'd like to add something to the whole franchise concept?
Well, yeah, from my experience, I would like to say that, it's very important for the brand values to be, exactly the same, even in the franchisee model. I do see some dilution in terms of, on the training part, on the display part, on the overall brand feel, which should not be the case. So I feel, the overall brand consistency is very important. That will only come through training the franchisee partners. Of course, they are not a part of the brand DNA. Would say that they're kind of evolving, they're learning. But for a consumer, I feel a franchisee or a non-franchisee store for that particular brand doesn't make any difference. The customer is experiencing the same brand. So I think that is something, that is one of the challenges, especially in fashion, where I feel the brands need to invest in trained manpower, where, that we are talking about customer experience.
Right, actually, the risk of losing control over what the brand experience the consumer is there, and therefore there is exhaustive capability build which is required.
Yes.
Which is what existing and for brands who've been franchising for a very long time do.
Yeah.
So, and as long as you can train and build capability in the franchisors in a manner that, in the franchisees in a manner that you would want the same representation, the consumer, as I said, is agnostic to the experience. He or she wants the same experience across. There should be perceptibly no difference between the two.
Prashant, I'll add to yours because ours is 100% franchise model. We have a choice to operate our own stores with FDI being allowed through automatic route now. But we chose not to, and it's not restricted only to India, it's worldwide. For the obvious benefits, Prashant, which you have mentioned. But I would say the biggest benefit is you focus on things which matter most.
Focus on the core.
On the core. You focus on your product development, which is the key. What is a consumer buying? Is buying a product. True. And then, all other services, visual merchandising is, is icing on the cake. So you focus on product, you focus on branding, you focus on, setting up very robust training programs. So franchisee in India becomes a bit more relevant than many other countries because of the spread, And when it comes to operating stores, believe you me, and you'll have to excuse me for the word I use, it's a donkey's job, very frankly, because it's huge operations. If you have 100 stores, you have 700-800 employees spread across 100 cities, lot of operations. For example, we sell about 2.5 million pairs. It comes to about 500 crores. We have a team of 24 people.
That's fewer people.
Yeah. Exit cost is zero. Capex is zero. So franchise does help. But I absolutely agree with Deepak also. What happens is, that's also a mode which you choose, franchisee mode. Is that if you have too many franchisees spread across India, spread across geographies, then probably you lose some control. Yeah. But if you choose to have regional franchises, maybe 4 to 5 for India for our sort of business, wherein we intend to open about 200 stores, that actually makes sense.
Absolutely.
So you have better control. You have to handle 4 partners because a partner is a partner. A franchise is a franchisee. Rather, a smaller franchisee will need more attention of yours, and he'll come up with more problems than the solutions. But franchisee absolutely makes sense, especially for fashion brand like ours, where we have intentions to grow faster. For example, we opened about 40 stores last year. Had it been opening store ourselves, we would have died
Scale
down at
becomes
20.
much. Absolutely. And what you're saying is right. Actually, in terms of the different categories and segments, the kind of mix of company-owned as well as franchise-owned that you would want varies.
Sure.
So for a lot of innovation actually runs through the company-owned system, because you would not want the franchisee to really take that kind of a risk. So therefore, a lot of industries work on a mix of company-owned as well as franchisee-owned, because you'd want to have the innovation established and then you take them there for the franchisee to just run with it.
Sure.
Although in a few instances where it's a 100%, it's a 100% franchisee model for you, you'd possibly have fewer instances of India first products coming through, because you'd possibly want to delay that kind of a chance wherein the franchisee, although they're small or large, might have that kind of a risk. So it's a mix, but it's an evolving field, by the way.
Yes.
So it's been there for the longest time, but as a science, it's still evolving.
Yeah.
And that's something that's great.
So it's going to be fueling the retail growth. Yeah, a lot of stores.
At this point in time, I have a small question,
Yeah.
because we have
Yeah.
a lot of people here are into the franchise business. What happens to those brands where the experience is so unique in itself that it can't be transported to a franchise level? And of course, I would just want to take the discussion forward and say that, is their model then a unique one in its own right, where they say, okay, we will do it ourselves, whether we reach scale or not, because we are into the uber premium space where we cannot possibly, even by the most expansive training, transfer the brand experience to another person or a franchise or a partner, and therefore we want to own it up, or where the business utility or the business core is such that it cannot be transferred in that fashion. Is there any space there, or we look at everything drifting towards a franchise model, even in a geography like ours? Any comments?
Mayank, one is, I'm sorry.
No, please.
One is franchisee also has subsets. There could be some operational franchises, there could be some investment franchises. But to answer your question specifically is, what will it take to train my guys? And why I can't do that to train your guys, you being a franchisee? There are people only. It's run by people. Stores are run by people. Whether it's super luxury, premium products, or tech products, you have to train them. It could be, brands guy. It could be the franchisee guys. So probably the investment control, very robust operations team is required for a tech product or a super luxury or premium product. But I think it's doable. It's doable because what you'll do with your employees, you can do with your franchises employees.
And Mayank, also in terms of a product which is very innovative or an experience which is very innovative, you would possibly want to start off and keeping the experience within the fold and try and ensure that the consumer has a uniform experience. Say example, Apple, when they opened their own stores, I believe they started off as their own. They run by their own employees, so that the consistency and information availability as well as knowledge that they had could be transferred in a uniform way across.
Yeah.
But going forward, once they realized that they had scale, there's something that they had perfected the art of saying that this is what we will tell the team. So then the team could be owned by Apple, or it could be owned by some other partner that they had. They could still administer and then test out whether it's been done the same way or not. And now suddenly you have across countries where Apple as well as and Samsung and all these players are going with franchisee partners. They are training themselves, their partners, in a manner so that they can have the same experience to the consumer as they would had been otherwise. A very high level of training is required for that, but that's something that the administrative job for the brand is. If you have to exist as a brand which is at the cutting edge of experiences, then maybe that's what you need to do.
Absolutely. And I would say we need elaborate guidelines, SOPs, which have to be reviewed, which have to be shared, so that's very important. Great. So that's some good insight on franchisee. And so that means more stores, that means more people, So now I would like to ask Mayank that, there is a scarcity of talent, retail talent, There are stores, there are businesses who are hungry for people who are equipped to kind of run this business, who have this complete understanding. So how do you see this? How do you tackle this as a brand? In kind of managing the manpower, in the retail.
Sure. In fact, I was thinking through this question from the start of this talk, and when I heard more opinions, it just elaborated itself, and I was taking some notes. See, to understand the talent situation of any geography or an industry, it's always easier to dissect the problem into multiple factors, right? So when we talk about the evolution of the industry itself, I see that happening on multiple ends. So today, we see that from the 90s to today until 22, the consumer has evolved. So the consumer has really, really evolved in terms of what they want. They are now more discerning, they are now more decisive, they are now more educated. Then what has also evolved on the same lines as the product, and also at the same time, the channels have evolved. Deepak was talking about how there were only mom and pop stores, and today there is online, there is self-service stores. Even the local kirana guy has evolved himself into a self-service format, where he has only 1,000 square feet of space, but he is evolving. So the channels are evolving, the consumer is evolving, the product is evolving, and we talked about franchisees, so the business models itself are evolving. Now, so there are 4 parts that are evolving at the same time, so therefore, there will be need for niche talent who understands this space better. There will be need for understanding, where would we need high-end expertise in terms of understanding how these threads come together and tie up into a united whole. And there will be a need to understand that where will operational talent go and where will the job shifting happen, right? So today, for example, I'm taking a longish route to answer a relatively simpler question, but just allow me that latitude.
Absolutely, yes. Go on.
So there was a time when the most important person in a retail, especially food FMCG retail or a grocery retail, was a distributor salesman who would make 40 calls a day, go from shop to shop during his day, make sure that the order comes back to the distributor and then gets delivered the next day. Right? That was the core of how the business was operating.
Yes.
Today I realize that there are applications where the retailer doesn't need to move a muscle. There is no need. If your brand is strong enough, if there is need at his store, he will ensure that he presses a button and your order gets placed at the distributor point. So the job shift has now happened, that can we develop tech where the need for a person going to 40 outlet is replaced by a person who can create infrastructure where that can automatically come to your systems and then get reported back, right? So on the lower ground, the bottom of the pyramid, we need to know the shift, and on the top of the pyramid, we need to have niche talent. So, and you're right, there is a huge dearth of talent. Just to throw some statistics, out of 130 crore people that we are, assuming there is 50% population that is in the zone where they are employable, we have about 4.5 crore subscribers to Provident Fund. That takes it to about 8% of the people who are currently formally employable. Out of this, I think at the leadership level, we are all willing to go to any bounds to pay any kind of money just to get the right leadership in the organization. And on the other side, in the operational space, we are really struggling with finding trained talent, right? So I think the answer is hidden in this longish discourse, that now industry will have to step up and say that people will just not self-train. The 4.5 lakh people coming out of MBA colleges every year will just not self-train. We will have to take initiatives to build in-house training mechanisms, because the shift is happening so strong. The last 20 years development will happen in the next 2, 3, 4 years. So the industry also knows that it's going to shift dramatically, and therefore I think there is a need for building in-house infrastructures for training the new talent that is coming in and increasing this base of 8%. Unless this 8% goes to a 20-25% in the country, we will always be short on talent, and it will just complicate the problems for the industry, because then you will be scampering behind that 8% and everybody else would be. And I was just reading, this is a 49 trillion industry. Where will the talent come from?
Absolutely.
And if your cost of talent continues to rise, these business models will become obsolete, because at some stage you have to get these costs in control, because your input costs are not in your control. The only cost you can control is having talent at a reasonable, I would say, cost and availability. So I think we will have to start in-house very quickly.
Thank you, Mayank. That's great insight. So what we discussed the journey of retail in India. We discussed, we have been having, we got some great insights into franchisee business in India as the growth enabler for the future. And interestingly, we've also got a lot of questions which have come from the viewers from all over the world. So we have kind of, we are a little short on time, so we have kind of shortlisted some interesting questions that will kind of value add to the discussion. Okay, so I'll be starting with those questions. Yeah. So, okay, so the first question that we've got is retail now been more glamorous than early years? Okay, so I'm going to be asking Deepak that, do you think retail is more glamorous now?
Oh, indeed it is. So if you go about two decades back, the service levels were pretty bad. The stores were not nicely laid out. They were pretty small. You enter and the stores are over. Now with the expectation of the consumers going up, especially after the online, era, which has changed the expectation. Now the physical stores are also changing.
Right.
So I'm pretty sure that it has already started happening, but in the next 2-3 years, when the offline retailers, which they are changing, will change in totality, it will be even more glamorous to visit stores, and they're going to be there. The stores, of course, gives you emotional connect, gives you social connect and tactile connect, which we Indians require when we go for shopping. Shopping is not just buying something, it's the experience which we get. So in that sense, yes, it's glamorous already, much more glamorous than what it was, and it will become even more glamorous.
I would sort of like, yes, that's true. It's becoming glamorous more for the consumer, to the fact that now it's more visual. It's much more, the experience is much more evolved. It's become much more rigorous and tough for the folks who are running the business. It's suddenly become a lot more challenging on the fact that the consumer taste is evolving. The consumer expectation and aspiration is evolving along with the way that India is growing, and the consumer expectations are reaching levels which are at par with the Western world, but maybe the levels of availability of resources is not to that extent. So yes, it is in a way becoming glamorous more in terms of being visual, but it is becoming more challenging at the same time for the business to be keeping pace with the expectation and the aspiration of the Indian consumer. So yes, I would say it's a mixed bag. Glamorous because it's more visual. Suddenly you have a lot of international brands which have perfected this art of becoming much more attractive, seductive over years, and suddenly you realize that the whole the environment as well as the infrastructure is trying to keep pace with the same.
But Prashant, we don't have a choice. If you really believe there's no choice, I understand these are business challenges, but if you have to keep pace with the time and the expectation of the consumer, it is required. Just imagine getting into a store, having an interactive mannequin, getting into the fitting rooms, having interactive fitting rooms, getting onto a digital wall where you don't need products to be there. You can order, you can pick, you can click collect, you can get it delivered. It's actually becoming glamorous. Of course, it is putting stress on the retailers, but that is what is required.
So examples of retailers like Biba, which is actually a homegrown brand.
Sure.
Suddenly you realize that, and this is my 8-year-old daughter, she's saying that, okay, and they also have kids stuff, and she's saying, okay, I think I like the yellow one more, and I have no clue what she's talking about. Suddenly you realize that there's an interactive menu which says you can actually check colors. She's checking on the colors and realizing that she likes the yellow more than the red.
Sure.
So yes, it is becoming much more glamorous, but then imagine the kind of width of product availability which is required for the merchandisers.
I'll tell you also something about the buoyancy glamour in this space. I've been visiting a lot of campuses lately because this is the placement time. So from all students that I keep hearing, they say that we want to join, if there is a choice between banking, between IT and between retail, we would rather go for retail because this is a very buoyant sector is what they say. They mention that this sector is prone to not going through its own crests and troughs, and it is rather a stable industry, and they would rather want to work in an industry where there is not a great threat of losing jobs all the time. So I think there is also a buoyancy glamour to this space because
that's a very anti-glamorous view to it. So, okay, there is a safety in the sector.
No, but I'll tell you, that's called the buoyancy glamour, because I categorically went deeper to say that, okay, is this, are you scared of job loss? They said, no, we are happy to be in a space where there is no concept like that. So, just to be on the brighter side of the note.
No, it also has to do with the evolution of retail. It is evolving every day. There's a lot of learning, a lot of excitement when they learn every day. A lot of interaction with the end consumer. Probably it must be stemming from there.
Yes.
And also
we leapfrogged a few years where the global retail developed. We've leapfrogged it through the whole modern retail as well as the e-commerce and e-retail. Suddenly that evolution has what would have taken 20 years in the developed world has taken 4 years.
Correct.
And
That's
suddenly
right.
that's where the glamour is coming through. I think the hard yards are still ahead of us.
Yes.
Absolutely, and I feel brand extensions. A lot of brands are opening cafes. Fab India has opened the experience center. So you do your shopping and you also go to the cafe and have some nice food. So you're taking that piece of experience with yourself. So
Even a
great.
traditional retailer like Reliance, they have come up with a format called Project Eve. That is the
Absolutely.
apparel format.
Yes.
It's 10,000 square feet. You have saloon, you have cafe, you have beauty services, you have events.
You get them in the morning and you let them go only in the evening.
So you
Absolutely.
keep
So
them
it's actually
engaged, keep them
glamorous. It's
engaged.
actually
That's right.
becoming glamorous. We only used to know about what's happening worldwide, but it's happening in India. For example, Seoul, I remember the Tesco, what they did, about a year back. Subway is what most of them use. They have a digital wall on the subway with your grocery put there with a QR code. You scan those and they know how much time you will take to reach your home. By the time you are home, the goods are serviced.
Absolutely. Same
One-
thing
That's
for
35
the whole
minutes.
Amazon
Wonderful.
Go outlet. It's just seamless shopping experience. It's not that it's flawless. There are flaws, but then again, Amazon is working on it. The whole concept of habit formation and in a manner that suddenly the experience gets elevated. It's all about that. So yes, it is glamorous, but then
It is actually becoming glamorous. Probably, I'll just take half a minute more because, both these things are so on different sides. I remember Kishore Biani talking about Big Bazaar format about 10 years back. Somebody asked him, why don't you add 10 checkout counters more? Why such a long queue? He says, if there's no queue, it is not a parameter of success. I want a chaos in my store. There should be some chaos because people are used to that chaos and that is what they need. This was about 7-8 years. But the lot of
that time I think
Expectation were
Future was
different.
wanting to do it in a format that is it's a bazaar, which is the original
Absolutely.
retail format. When you have a mela, we have a
Sure,
congregation, entertainment
Sure,
happening.
sure.
Then moving on to but now Future Retail has actually moved from there to a more organized
Zero checkout.
format.
There's no checkout
Yeah.
now
I think
in
the
many of their stores.
consumerism also has laid it back upon the retailers to do that all the more. I think there is a
Absolutely.
backward pressure also by the consumer itself that okay, if you are vying for my attention, might as well be more glamorous because how will I differentiate you otherwise?
Absolutely.
Great.
It is
So I
indeed
think,
glamorous.
Absolutely great. So we've also, I think, answered the second question along with this, which wanted to know about artificial intelligence, how it's going to impact the retail industry. So Deepak has already talked about these digital trial rooms and all these kind of technologies which are available. Okay, so moving to the next question, which is about franchisee. So, Prashant, how franchise operations can be better managed in India, given the current situations? Briefly.
Sure. So franchise operations are at a cusp when suddenly a lot more brands are looking for franchisee partners. A lot of franchisees are looking for more brands to be added to their portfolio. So the first and the biggest and the best step that a brand could make is make the brand a very strong and powerful one. Suddenly, if you have that, then a lot more of processes which you would have developed, a lot more of capability which you've developed in-house can then be administered and passed on to the brand. So very strong processes of how the brand experience with the consumer is. Detailed down SOPs. McDonald's is known for SOPs to the last T. So they have an SOP for opening the store, they have an SOP for closing the store, which is obvious. They have an SOP for a few SOPs also. So it's that kind of detailing and process orientation which allows for uniformity of experience.
Absolutely.
And that's critical. The second thing is they need to build capability. They need to have learning modules in-house built through, and that's something that the brand has to do to ensure that the experience that the consumer has globally is similar. The third part and the third aspect of it is having a little bit of control and audit mechanism across wherever the brand is present. You do it in a manner which is seamless and part of the whole business, but then that's critical because that's the only way you can retain some sort of control and semblance, and corrective action can be taken for the brand. And that's very, very important.
Absolutely. And to add to that, many brands are using retail analytics, video analytics, where they are getting data from the stores, where they are taking, you know, corrective measures in terms of the layouts and everything.
So let me give you an example of what PepsiCo does. PepsiCo has product quality checks which are done across the company-owned markets and the franchisee-owned markets. We have product quality checks in the plant and outside the plant. We have audit mechanism for how is the sales being done. Is there a frequency, or is there a spike happening across, an artificial spike? All these things are administered, checked, and feedback given, corrective action taken. And that's something which is part of life. It is not something which is happening at bursts, or suddenly somebody wakes up and does that. It's a process oriented flow of work that one needs to do.
Right.
And that's something which controls and helps the franchisee and the franchisor maintain a good balance, because you exactly know what needs to be done and is it being done or not. If not, then corrective action or some other recourse.
Prashant, I have a question on this one. Of course, we are also gazing into the future. You know, what happens when the growth stops? We're growing at a 7.5% rate today, but at some stage we'll slow down, right? If not today, then some years into the future. And the pressure on margin increases because there is uber competition. You're opening up your economy to almost everyone.
Yeah.
Will the business models continue to think of franchise as a cost-effective way to scale up, or they will try to contract and integrate? Because, you know, while this looks like a very nice proposition right now, given the scenario we are into, but this question is also to you, Deepak, because, you know, while we're talking about franchisee, we should also evaluate it from both the sides, because what happens when the margins contract and we stop growing?
As a franchisor, when that's happening, my first recourse would be to reduce costs, but the whole point is I'm already trying to offload a lot of my costs. Therefore, the impact to me is twice removed in the first place. Second, once it happens, then the whole risk of mitigating that challenge on growth happens, and therefore obviously your partner and the model will evolve over a period of time. What are the contractual, what are the royalties involved, what is the percentage at which you sell to, or what is the revenue share model? Those will evolve, and obviously if now nobody is growing, then you will tweak that around. So it's an evolutionary model which keeps on tweaking itself. If growth is happening a lot more, the financials are looking really great, then you try and invest behind the brands and try and grow more. You try and develop new products. If it's not happening, you have a challenge on growth, then suddenly you cut costs, you make it more efficient, you try and pass on the efficiencies to the franchise partner so that they also can make the ship tighter and parry that. Because it's going to be, yes, growth is not always going to be 7.3, 7.5, 8% that we're looking at. But you can prepare yourself, and that's where the processes, capabilities, the tight handshakes come through. If you've done that, then you've almost ensured that even when the tough time comes in, or relatively tougher times come in, you can tweak the model around.
You can pass the time.
What will also help is, as I mentioned in the past, is rather than having a lot of franchisee partners where the scale for each of them is pretty small. So if somebody has 5 stores and 4 of them are not doing well, he's dead. So it's always better to have a small set of partners with large set of stores to all of them. So as a gamut, when they see the P&L as a chain. They don't see P&L by a store. So that will help tighter situation when the growth comes down.
So I think global brands, that's why looking at master franchisees.
Yeah.
You have 2 franchisees who are looking at all of McDonald's India business. You have the Pizza Hut delivery being consolidated under 1 franchisee. Similar. Therefore, you have a lot of administrative support coming through their scale, and then there is a lot of professional setup at the franchise partners also. Therefore, the conversation is much more evolved in terms of how to get the business to the next level, or to hunker down and to ensure that the tough times pass by, and then we start building again.
All right.
Great. So thank you for these insights. So Deepak, I want to ask you now that, what are the latest challenges that you foresee for the retail industry, and the trends, like emerging?
See, what is happening in India is everybody's talking about Omni, but nobody's doing it. The fact remains. So there is a lack of intent, and there is no clear visibility on return on investments on digitization or getting into Omni or improvements in the visual appeal at the store or investment in the front end staff. So while we all talk, we don't do it because we are waiting for someone else to do it, and then I'll do it. Then I'll move ahead.
But I have a
Sure.
different and contrary
Sure.
point of view to
Sure.
that. I do believe that a lot of brands are actually taking that plunge and ensuring that and taking this whole challenge of how to manage the offline and online businesses or the models head on. Pepperfry started having physical, it's an online, complete online, initially online model, and they started opening stores which allow the consumers to go and check the product out, have a feel of it. Again, Shopper Stop, completely offline model for the longest time, and suddenly they've opened up themselves, they have an online store, e-commerce suddenly started off and it's booming. So what they have an option of getting into the whole 9 yards on the omnichannel.
Prashant, the problem,
so obviously it started off and it's in its infancy. It's still it's developing in globally in the global markets also. So I think baby steps are being made. The state of evolution or stage of evolution that the India retail economy is, I think we are making the right moves. Yes, maybe we are talking a lot more than doing, but the good news is that for once we are talking and doing pretty much at the same time. The scale might be a little.
No, Prashant, I understand what you're saying. So what has happened with them is, in the quest to survive, they're trying to do a few things. So online guys getting offline, offline guys getting online, but nobody is getting omni. So you have inventory separately in offline, you have inventory separately in online, you have pricing which is very different online, which is pricing which is very different offline. Digital investments in the stores are not happening still. So that is what I meant, because there are both the words existing. There has to be collaboration rather than you create your own word. I have an offline word, I will create my own online word. I have an online word, I'll create my own offline word. I think
that's the learning curve, Deepak.
Yeah, that won't help.
In technology, I would say that there's a huge difference in the online and offline pricing for, let's say, mobile phones, handsets, laptops, DVD players. People are evolving, the brands are evolving, the consumers are understanding the fact that there was a choice. So now, and all brands are doing it. In fact, Nike, Adidas, I'm sure Crocs.
The fact remains,
so the kind of merchandise that you have in online stores as well as offline is now differentiated. Therefore, when you go offline or go to a Nike store in a mall, the kind of product range that they'll have will be different. So it's evolving. Mobile, Apple, the same price across online, offline.
Not even a single brand, Prashant, today has an omni. Not even a single brand. Across categories.
Evolving to that. Not right now, but evolving.
Yeah. So offline guys are getting online, online is getting offline. That is survival. They have to survive.
It's not innovation. Getting there.
It's not actually innovation. Very frankly, not even single brand has gone into omni. Not even single. Pricing could not track. To answer your question of the differentiated merchandise availability online and offline is actually not good. Consumer is same. Why are we differentiating that a consumer offline is different than a consumer online? It's same consumer for me. By differentiating is like, because my margin structures are different in online because I have to fund discounting. So that's actually not a right, fair business practice. I should get the same merchandise offline, online at the same pricing, which is not today. Online I get Apple $10,000 less than a physical store.
Now
so that is where the challenge.
That's the difference. Now you don't. You get the same price, and Apple is the one who's done it. Samsung, because of the whole range of products, they've not been able to do that. Apple, by the sheer dint of the fact that they have only 6 or 7 products at any point in time, they are able to manage the price that they are offering online and offline. The other day, my wife wanted to buy an iPhone 10. Obviously, we did not go in and buy it out. So we went and bought an iPhone 7. Exactly the same price in an Apple store as against online. In fact, some additional, because we go to the Reliance Digital quite often, therefore there's some additional advantage that you'd get. So I think it's evolution which is happening towards that.
But
Only
it's pretty
channel
slow.
In the way that it is.
I think in my
pretty
view,
slow.
The whole
It's
gamut
pretty
is not
slow.
there.
It's pretty slow.
I think in my
slow.
view, everybody's scared that in a consolidating market, who takes the risk first? I think it's a lot of risk.
Absolutely.
Everybody's trying to see where will the elephant exist in the room and in what shape and form. I think risk is huge right now. A lot of things to do at the same time, and if you continue to go omni, I think it hurts your margins very badly. If you and especially if you're the first one there and don't succeed, I think it's a lot of risk. I think So let's agree that there is a lot
No,
of risk
Omni
which we are
can-
scared.
no,
I would
Omni-
say
no,
where,
Omni-
where Mountain Dew, the tagline, "Naam bante hain risk." You have to take risks to be
Yes.
actually be able
So
to
I think
get-
the
no,
risk takers
somebody
will
who moves in
make
first
it.
will have an advantage. Obviously, there will be a cost attached.
See,
to
the
it.
problem-
but that's a risk that you want to take.
No, Prashant, the problem I feel is our legacy retail systems do not allow a seamless integration into the new tech. You know, if I say Omni, believe me, it will make sense to my P&L. I will use the same inventory. Why should I park certain inventory with Flipkart, certain inventory with Amazon,
But the
certain
model
inventory
is
in my
not
stores?
clear. I think people
Why should I do it? I
No,
should
while-
have the single
while
view
the
of
thought
my
is there,
inventory.
so you're right, the thought is very unique, but the model is not there. I have not seen a model which exists and says, okay, if this model were to work, you know, and when I say model, I just don't mean a operational model, but also, you know, how will it fit into the existing people that
That's
you
the whole
have?
point. There's no one right.
There is no model.
Yeah.
There is no one right model.
That's why
what's
there are
right for
different
one
stories
could
of
be
evolution, maybe.
completely incorrect for the
Sure.
other.
That's right.
So therefore, it's an evolution. Everybody is trying to find out.
I think everybody
what
wants to
is
get the model
fit
right
for my
maybe, you
brand.
know.
And want somebody else to do it.
Want somebody else to get it perfected for them, you know. So
And
That's
for
the
that, the
risk that one wants to
pricing,
take.
I think the pricing is one constraint. You know,
The whole
omni-channel has to have the same
merchandise,
pricing.
yes.
You can't have differentiated pricing in different channels. But I think, yeah, I mean, my perception still is we are moving a bit slow, and there's much more pace required.
Okay.
Else, this will start hitting your bottom line also.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's
I
not
think
helping.
now with
otherwise.
if Walmart was to come in and you know tie up with Flipkart, having retail stores as well as on, that would be a big step.
Sure.
Again, Amazon with the way they're investing money inside in their business, sure they would be looking at trying to get an offline model going because that's the way they're looking at globally.
Sure.
And India being the second largest market now for them after the US, I'm sure there's a lot more coming our way. I think we're in for very exciting times on retail and the organized retail as well as the unorganized, trying to build themselves and give a better consumer experience. I think
Absolutely.
it's really exciting time. So glamorous in that respect. So there are a lot of students I think on the FB Live. So I think yes, it's going to be a very exciting time. Glamorous in terms of growth consistently being there. I think this is a good industry to be part of, or at least looking at.
Great. Absolutely correct. So can we take a little relevant topic, you know, which is there, which is about GST. So if, you know, Deepak, like has GST impacted the retail? You
Absolutely. It's a unified tax regime. Movement across India is pretty smooth. There are no differentiated VAT rates now. Every state doesn't have, you know, differentiated VAT rates. There's no CST. There is no excise. There is no CVD. There is no separate customs CVD which they apply. There is no service taxes. It's pretty smooth, and I think that's one of the biggest legislative changes which have happened after demonetization, which actually negatively impacted. GST temporarily has impacted because people were not prepared. Even the government sites are not prepared. E-way bills have not been introduced. But as a unified tax reform, I think this is good for the industry. It is good for us. It is good for the retail industry. I think the next move which has to be there, we have about 4 rates of GST today. World over, wherever GST is, they have gone to maximum 2 rates. One is 0.
1 and 2, yeah, exactly.
One is 0. There is no GST on, say, life-saving drugs or essential commodities, and then they have 1 single %. But in India, of course, you know, political compulsion doesn't allow. Why a BMW will have 18% GST when your Tata T will have 18% GST? So the political compulsion doesn't allow, you know, the luxury items and the sin goods have to be more. But I think that is the next step. Maybe in 3 to 5 years, more simplification when it comes to the GST rate. But at the face of it, amazing decision, very bold decision, politically also very bold decision, and they are also trying to bring the higher GST rates. 28% items they had about 220, it has come to 46 now. They've reduced it to 18 and 5. I think it's good for the industry, and it will help you know, easier movement of goods and easier accounting.
Absolutely. I think it's a huge step forward towards getting a lot of unorganized, unreported, unsecured business which is there
the tax net.
under the fold. Suddenly you have a lot more visibility of those small mom and pop stores, a lot of those small wholesale businesses which are actually flourishing and doing businesses worth crores and multiples of crores. Suddenly you have a lot of visibility to that. Suddenly all those businesses are under the purview. suddenly you have a lot more engagement, and the collection's gone up. At least it will go up over a period of time. You're right. I think right now there have been some political compulsions which have led to multiple, and that too, there have been multiple rounds of discussion in which how the rates are going to be fixed. There are different lobbies which are working with and against, but that's part of the deal. That's what India is. I think it's a huge move. Once you consolidate it and bring it down to 2, at max 3 slabs, over a period of time it will come down to 2, hopefully.
Sure.
And that's when this whole move will make it advantageous for the economy as a whole, and definitely for retail, because you have a lot more uniformity and a uniform playing field for the organized players who are playing it by the book, with the bills, tax being paid, and suddenly a lot more consumers having access to pricing which is uniform across. That's something, except that the supply chain part also becomes very,
absolutely,
it becomes a lot more structured and streamlined. Suddenly you don't have to have a CNF in every state. Suddenly you don't need to have a production facility close to where the business is happening, because you have so many regulations and licenses required. Now the ease of doing business becomes so much more. So compounded with the fact that there is a lot more digital payments, as well as a lot more visibility of the payments being happening. A lot of GST bringing in a lot more consumers and customers together, saying that okay, this is what the rate is, you need to pay taxes, uniformity of prices across. I think along with the fact that there is ease of business which has happened on account of fewer licenses, you can actually open a company in 2 days now, provided you have all the details with you. And it can be done online to a large extent. You don't need to go to various different offices running around to get a company open.
So it's a single window.
Yeah, it's a single window. My wife runs a salon, which is it's a luxury boutique salon, and the kind of time that she would have spent 4 years back would have been, they would have still been planning to open it, and it's called Magnifique, and they're starting to do it now. Next, they're opening the second store. It's happening in a manner which is seamless.
And there could be, there are 2 more things I would like to put when the GST. One, it's really good for consumer. With the anti-profiteering laws, which have not been very strictly implemented at this point of time, the prices are bound to go down. So FMCG guys have done, because they can't hide. But other products, it's pretty difficult. Lot of SKUs, the balancing of margins, how are they making more, what they were making before, because the government mandates that if you make more money, you have to pass it on to the consumer. That's one. So that, I think the next stage for them would be to implement it very strictly, which means there will be a lot of benefit to the consumer, prices will go down. And the second thing, which I think would be the big one, and which every country has gone through when they have implemented GST, is there's nothing called MRP then. So MRP
that's
concept,
a tricky one, actually, considering that they did. So the whole idea of having the PDS when it happened was that there was no control over pricing. Everybody was either overpricing or reducing the quality. So that's going to be a tricky one, because that will really throw it open to pricing as it happens across the globe, which is the consumer, whoever can get scale, suddenly gets a lower pricing. So
but if
it's going to be a huge move. That I think is some way down the line.
Right.
No,
right.
they are wary of it, because till now they were not paying the taxes at all. Now, since it starts from the taxes starts from the procurement itself of raw material. So if you are paid your GST on raw material, and if you don't bill it to the end consumer, you don't get benefit, input credit of it. So till now they were not in the net, and now suddenly they have come into the net. So that's the pain.
Absolutely, and
that's the pain.
Earlier, one would hoard stuff.
But
one would bill it at, let's say, example, unfair trade practices. You would bill a lot of stock towards the month end, and then you'll keep it for the next 2 or 3 weeks. And at times, and a lot of partners, distributors or traders would do that. Now, if you don't do that by the 10th of the next month, you don't get any input credit for the previous month. So suddenly, you realize that you need to do it. The e-way bill, what it brings along. If today a vehicle has to start off, billings happen, 24 hours, within 24 hours it has to reach the destination. If it doesn't, you have to basically call up the tax department, say that why has the truck not reached, has it broken down. And that's the advantage of a lot more vigilance is now available at the touch of a
So are we saying if the picture is so hunky-dory, then is it education that is coming in the way? Because ultimately they have nothing to lose. It's about paying the taxes. They were not going into their own pockets anyways, because they were not collecting it for anybody.
I think situation is not really extremely hunky-dory, but I think we are moving towards the fact that a lot more visibility
Will more
is there.
education help in this case?
A lot more visible education will help for sure. I think a lot more understanding of the fact that how this will impact and how now there's a vigilance happening on, and we know what you're doing, so better correct yourself or there are going to be ramifications of that. So suddenly that fear is there. People are suddenly realizing that if they do not pay taxes, and I'm sure they're trying to find out ways even now, but at least that awareness that if we do not do something about it, we will get caught is there.
So
there are
certainly is a hot topic. We are a little crunched on time, Deepak. I need to, okay.
Just to answer your question is, largely the problem, the resistance or the unhappiness is from the sectors or the set of traders who were not paying taxes at all. But if you see the benefits for organized players like you or all of us, we were paying excise when we were manufacturing, or we were importing, we were paying CVD. Then all the services, we were paying service taxes. We were anyway paying VATs in different states
And
differently.
different size, different amounts of VAT
Different
happening
amount,
across.
yeah. And you don't have visibility, because suddenly you find one state increases your VAT from 12.5% to 15.25%, for example, Kerala, and your all business plan has gone for a toss.
Absolutely.
And then when you add all these taxes, which you were paying before, and see now, consolidated GST what you were paying, you are actually saving at least 25% of what you were paying before.
That's right.
As an industry.
That's
Yeah.
at a maybe at a larger level. That's not true for all industries.
As a fashion
yeah, maybe
industry,
for fashion, yes, that maybe that's true. For a lot of industries, that actually has become either it's remained the same or becoming a little more challenged. Having said that, I think what it also does is it allows for a lot more streamlining of the, and that's something I'm talking about, the streamlining of the tax structure allows for a lot more streamlining at the back end, the whole supply chain, the whole, so the middlemen were making 60-75% margins. Let's say food, India is the largest manufacturer or
Prashant,
producer of food.
I've just got to the end of the program, so I'll just take one question quickly for Mayank. Where if you can elaborate on the kind of job opportunities that will be kind of there in the retail industry that you foresee in the coming future.
So when you say areas, you mean functional areas,
Functional
right?
areas, yes.
So I think as the industry itself suggests, it's blooming, it's exploding in fact. So operations and sales will be one of the key areas where we'll have a lot of jobs coming. I also want to take away the scare, at least take the edge off the fact that with tech coming in and with AI coming in, a lot of jobs can contract. Some of the reports I was reading this morning also suggest on similar lines, but I think my view is on the contrary. I think there's a lot of room on execution, and given the labor market that we are as a country, I think there will be room for a lot of jobs getting created, especially on the operations and the sales side, because as we were discussing earlier, the models are still not in place. A lot of execution has to happen for the models as they develop, and therefore a lot of execution capabilities, especially on the operations and the sales side, will get important as we go along. And I think one of the other areas which I'll also not just opine but also plead to all the people in this group is that a lot of new areas where new jobs should be created is around upskilling. I think one of the areas which has been left untouched, or maybe a little bit ignored, I would say, is that not a lot of investments have gone into upskilling your people, your own business partners, and especially we were talking about traders and people who need education. I think a lot of jobs can get created in that space. We are seeing education sector growing up. That's the probably only sector that has seen now jobs growing over a period of last 3 years. So I think there is a lot of room and scope for operations and sales jobs to come up. And I think on a niche level also, a lot of colleges I would generally recommend that a job that is a mix of understanding of retail and tech together is something that will come up in the near future. I am already seeing signs of it. To perfect these models, to make sure there is omni everywhere, we will need jobs where we'll need skills that specialize in tech and operations of retail at the same time. So I think a lot of scope. I think jobs are going to come, and we'll just need to be ready with the right skills in place to be able to take them.
Absolutely. I think rather than contracting, I think number of jobs will actually increase.
Yes,
it's just that the
indeed.
skill set required for them will change.
Will change, yes.
So they'll be by 2025, at an estimated level, there'll be around 583 million consumer class which will be available in this
That's
country.
right.
We'll be almost doubling. We'll be adding a Sweden and a France put together in terms of the retail economy that we'll be
That's right.
building on.
That's
So
right.
that's the kind of scale that obviously the number of outlets that we'll go to, the organized trade will increase almost double in size. Therefore, the skill set required will be different. Possibly 5 to 10 to 12% of the current jobs in their current avatar will not even remain.
Yes.
But a lot more newer jobs will come in. A lot more tech-based jobs will come in. A lot of merchandisers possibly will become visual merchandisers. A store manager will become a more of a supply chain person who has a product availability portfolio under him. So a lot of changing of the current structure of roles will happen. A lot more interesting development will come about that, and therefore I think skilling and upskilling. Also the whole idea of having a lot more educated workforce which is able to actually have the experience that we've been talking about, how the brands are looking for the uniform experience. I think that kind of skilling will be required, and that's when the field operations as well as the retail operations, the management and the merchandising part is where the big thrust will come.
Indeed. In fact, the sector will also formalize itself. We are just 8% organized right now.
Sure.
So as we get into more and more people with GST and initiatives like this, more and more people now wanting to organize themselves, I think there will be a lot of shift focus from unorganized sector to organized sector jobs. So, and they'll also add and contribute to the overall number of jobs. So I think I agree with the point that we'll have more jobs, especially in the operations area. Let's get skilled for it.
Great. So I think these are challenging
Yes.
times, exciting times
Yes,
for all of
they are.
us, for the industry. So we are at the fag end of our discussion, a very insightful and engaging discussion from all of us. So just to sum up in the end, if all of you can just kind of give your vision for the future, very crisply, that where do you see the retail evolving, say by 2030. So if you can just, all of you can give your little understanding on that.
Sure. I think
Yes,
we're
Prashant.
living in very exciting times as far as the retail industry is concerned. I think we are at a cusp of where the almost like 27, 28 years of post-liberalization retail boom that we've seen is actually only the tip of the iceberg. What we're seeing or what we're going to be seeing in the next 12 odd years will actually just blow whatever we've done so far out of whack, because the kind of we're poised for growth. We're looking at doubling of the retail economy. We're looking at a lot more trained and educated youth coming into the working class. I think the whole omni-channel, the whole retail interacting with the offline and online models, consumer engagement going up. It's going to be a model where I can visualize the whole tech walls, the whole experience of doing the ordering right now within the store and delivering at home, which is actually already happening in the global scenario. I think this is a really exciting industry to be in, and I think it's going to be a very, very interesting place to be.
Thank you so much, Prashant. It's a great transformation which is happening currently. Deepak, would you like to add some words to that?
Yeah, I mean, as somebody asked, is it glamorous? It is glamorous, and it's going to be more glamorous. And also to mention, there will be a lot of opportunities, job opportunities in retail, because stores are not going to be dead. Yeah? It is only that skill set will change. The multi-channels will become omni-channel. A consumer will be seen as one wherever he shops from. You will find a lot of digital innovation in the stores, but robots won't take the place of people, at least in India, because India, there is a social and emotional connect which goes with the shopping rather than buying something. They buy experience, they buy the service. That is how our traditional unorganized channel has been built. When you go to a neighborhood store, he doesn't even take money from you, say, I'll take from your dad. That kind of emotional connect and social recognition you get. So robots won't take the place in India, at least for the till the time 2030 we're talking. Yes, it will be emotionally, socially led one. Secondly, as I said, online will stabilize. The kind of growth which we are seeing, in X's, which is like 5x, 7x, has already come down to 30-35% this year. Once the business models of online businesses become bottom-led, in the P&L and the profitability-led, rather than losing 16% EBITDA by selling more, you're losing more, this will stabilize and will remain very important constitution of distribution. But the key in a country like India will still be the physical stores. How I see stores shaping up is they'll become smaller in size and maybe used for fulfillment also, and a lot of expansion of those stores. So expansion won't stop, size may drop, and it may be used for fulfillment also for omni-channel. So that is what I see. It's going to be glamorous. It is glamorous. It will be even more glamorous with a lot of technology moving in, and the things changing. Today we don't allow our store associates to use the mobile on the floor, and we want to bring about a digital store of future. You ask somebody, some brand to start giving Wi-Fi at the stores, we are not very open. So a lot of things will change, and I say 2030 is a bit far. I think it will all happen in the next 5 years, and there'll be a lot of job creation, and it will remain glamorous.
Wonderful. I think we're all looking forward to that. We're not in a time machine, but yes, we can sense the the key feelings, and of course India is a unique country, it's a special country, so we have to kind of evolve and kind of bring a model which is more suited to our environment. So Mayank, would you like to add to that?
Just one more thing. I think what I also see is a momentary blip in the talent landscape. So currently you have generic skills that are available in the market. You can actually go out, pay a little extra premium and get a certain talent of your kind. In these 5 years that we've spoken about, I think in the next 5 years we will become very, very specialized. So the skills will also become unique to the organizations or sectors that are going to be absorbing them. So a food industry for that matter, will not have a replicated set of skills that probably a non-food retail industry may have, because the models will be unique, the models will be different. There are different products, different shelf lives. Like I said, the products are evolving itself. So I think for some moment there will be very, very unique skills required, and they will have to be inbred, because your own models will be so unique, because you're going to be vying for that little space that is already there. The consumers are not growing, their choices are growing. So I think, and then it'll probably, till we reach 2030, we'll again go into an era where we'll have generalized skills. We will have common skills across industry, but I think this is very exciting time. This is a time to see how skills transform and evolve, being unique for some time for most organizations and sectors, and then getting common again. So I think from here to again a generic journey will be something very exciting. So look forward to seeing that.
Yeah, great. And to sum up, I would say that we had a very great discussion. We talked about seamless integration, we talked about evolution, we talked about having training, skill sets. So I think we are all kind of in a phase where we are all kind of learning from each other. We are all getting impacted by the technology which is kind of coming to us. But yes, being like an emotional country where where we all love our piece of experience when we go. I think this is going to be a unique blend of all that, and so I would like to thank you, Deepak, Mayank and Prashant. It was a great morning discussion that we had, and hope to see you guys again soon with equally interesting topic in the future. Thank you so much.